Oh gosh, well, and you know, so much of, because she'd get on to me all the time when I was in Virginia, and I think the majority of it was more from worry.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I'm in my 20s, you know,
Uh-huh.
and I am living my life. That doesn't mean I'm partying every night. I'm just living my life, and it's not that I didn't think about her or anything, but you know, and she, you know, every time that I would call her, it's been 36 days since I heard. I mean, she kept notes,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, and we found them, and I
And
didn't
really,
want
you don't want
to. No.
somebody. See, I will never do that. I will never do that to him. I've never done it in 30, almost 30
Mhm.
years and never will
Mhm.
because I lived that life with my mother.
Yes. Yes.
I would not do that to
Right.
another human
Right.
being.
Right.
No one knows what that's like until you live
That's
through it.
right. That's right.
And I
Yep.
think no matter how much you love somebody,
Mhm.
everybody needs that space.
Mhm.
They need their own
Mhm.
time,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
And this is never going to change.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
we're never going to be a character there on the street character in
Mhm.
Dollywood.
Mhm.
Uh, Played the part of Ma Hatfield,
Okay.
and she loved us both.
Uh huh.
She was a sweet lady, and especially loved him.
Mhm.
And she told me long, long ago, she said, "You will always have him,
Mhm.
even though you don't have him."
Mhm. Oh.
And when she told me that, it kind of hurt me,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
But so
But it's the
true,
truth.
so true.
Yeah.
She knew that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
Hmm.
you know, I don't guess any of us can predict what's going to happen,
Mm-mm.
and you know, in life you're going to get hurt.
Mhm. I know. I know. And if you, that is part of what love's about.
Yeah, you're going to be
That's
hurt.
how you learn and grow.
You're going to be hurt at times.
Yeah.
I used to spend this time with him, and when we would start out, and he would tell me bye at the fountain there, and he had to go through the 50s to clock out,
Mhm.
and I would watch him leave,
Mhm.
and there'd be a hole in my heart, you know.
Mhm.
I'd walk to my vehicle and thinking, well, you know, he's
Mhm.
gone.
Mhm.
But then 2 weeks later, I couldn't wait to get there
Uh huh. Uh huh.
and have that time.
Uh huh. Yep.
Every moment was special,
Yep.
you know, because we knew wasn't gonna have a lot of time. But I
Right.
think that probably that makes you appreciate
Mhm.
everything a whole lot more.
Mhm.
My son Eric told me just not long ago. He talked about us. He used to think that was he was worried that I
Mhm.
was going to really be hurt.
Mhm.
And he's kind of come around, you know, and he told me, he said, y'all have a bond that not a lot of people have.
Mhm.
And he said, you're not lonely.
Mhm.
Even though you're there by yourself,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know that you've got that connection with him. And he said, there are people that are married that are sitting on the couch
Yes.
side by side
Yes.
that's more lonely than
Lonely.
you are.
You're right.
I thought
You're
about
right.
that and I said, you know, that is the truth.
Mhm. Mhm.
Look out in the sunroof.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet.
Said I hadn't got to be out here. Jill, I'm so glad you're here.
Oh,
See, I hadn't got to
Joey.
enjoy my sunroom in a while.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Oh,
I
that's
just
sweet.
I really think now. I thought about her and I said, she's at peace.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. She,
She's
you
at
know,
peace now.
I think you will remember Doris McDonald, her neighbor.
Yes. Oh, yes.
um, she called me, and I didn't get to speak with her long, and she's gone downhill.
Oh.
She was at the thing, but she was very shaky, and she isn't at Beechwood anymore. She sold her house,
Oh.
and her boys just didn't want her there by herself, and she's in a little I think she's in a maybe like a little apartment somewhere
Oh, I see.
in a
Mhm.
community.
Yeah.
But anyway, she was there, and she called and left the sweetest voicemail. She said, you know, we lost her. We lost her several years ago. And I agree with that. She said she was my friend, and I missed her when she left here, and I'm so glad I got to, you know, have her birthdays with her and everything. But I have my wonderful memories,
Yeah.
you know, of her and everything. And she said, I'm sad for you, but I'm glad for her because and that she said, you know, she's got her memory back now, and and I totally agree with her. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
I told a lot of people.
You know, there's things that's worse than death.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes death is a
Is
relief.
there? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yep.
If you don't have any quality life.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
I know. Yeah. She.
And look at how long your grandmother lingered.
I know. I know.
I
Yeah.
thought about that a lot of times.
I did too. I did too.
Could
Yep.
have lingered on
I know.
and on.
And honestly, I was worried about that between that and Francis Brazier, because you know, Ginger lives in Southern Pines.
Right.
It's 4 hours away, and Francis was at Rolling Green, and she died a week after her 94th birthday, and I was at her birthday, and she was no longer speaking, but it was, and everybody's different. I get it, but she was no longer speaking, but they still rolled her. She was still eating and still able to cut her stuff and feed herself and put her fork down and pick up her glass of cranberry juice. It was phenomenal to see that, just how different that was from other people, you know,
Right.
just what was still intact and what wasn't.
Right.
And she was at so Ginger had it in a little, you know, fellowship room or whatever, and anybody that came and brought a card and stuff, she asked them to read their card to her, you know, kind of sit in a chair here and read the card to her. And her her old former neighbor where they had lived, the lady, the husband and wife, they were there, and you could tell that she recognized just about everybody. Melinda Leard was there, I remember that, and she looked at those, and she would do, I don't know if you remember this, but you know, they all had those long, because they had narrow feet and everything. She had that long finger and those piercing blue eyes, and she'd do that to you.
Oh, yeah.
And she would do that when she'd see somebody and recognize
She
them.
knew them. Uh-huh.
So he and they had always cut up. They had gotten along really well, and they were all time kind of pulling one on each other. And so he read the card to her, and it was, I don't remember what it was on the front, but he said, "We got you something that you're really going to like," or something like that. And he said something about it's a yellow bikini. And she's sitting there listening to him, and when he said that, everybody's laughing, and she went and looked around the room like, you know, she got it. You know, it was just a lucid day for her. Thank God it was a lucid day
I
for her.
know.
And although she didn't say a word, she portrayed everything in her eyes to everybody that she got it.
What about that?
Oh, it was just awesome. And then a week later, Ginger called me and said, "I just gotten the call. Can you go and sit with her until I get there?" So I went and I did, and you know, I just talked to her and sang to her and held her hand and played Alan Jackson's the sweet CD that has all those sweet little hymns on it and everything. That was one of her favorites, and Ginger didn't want me to stay, so I went and got her something to eat, and then she said, "Go home, go home, go home." But then she called me at 2 in the morning and said she's gone, so I got up, got dressed, and went back and stayed with her until all of her cousins from Virginia got into town. because
Yeah.
she was alone.
Alone.
And, or, and her husband, who she's not married to anymore, was, God, just an ass.
Oh.
And, I mean, and so anyway, so, you know, and I was there. I was there when they, with Ginger, when they came in and they changed her diaper, and so the gown's up and everything, and she was a bag of bones.
Mm.
And God, I did not want that for Mama.
No, no.
And she, I can't remember the last time we talked, and I don't know if it seems like it was the fall. It wasn't that long ago, but I don't know if I had told you about her having fallen and put her head through the wall.
Yes, you told me about that.
Okay. Well,
Lost her direction and ended up
yeah.
falling. Mm-hmm.
Well, nobody saw how it happened,
Oh,
but she landed on her back because she hurt her pelvis, and so I would think that would mean this part of her head went through the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And she that so, like, that was in August, late August, like around the 24th of August, and on August 10th we had the annual care plan meeting with folks at the gardens, and she was great. She was participating in everything, appetite good, going on field trips, just a whole thing, just loving it, no need for changes or anything like that. She has that fall 2 weeks later. 2 weeks after that, they call us back in to tell us she needs to go on hospice and she needs to go to the step-down unit. She's first on our list. And although when I was with her when she went to the hospital to get checked out, no concussion and no, her pelvis wasn't no cracks or breaks or anything.
Right.
But she was on pain meds. They put her on pain meds that made her groggy and all of that, and she was just sore, And so for the first couple of weeks, all she wanted to do was just lay. I mean, she hurt. I mean, she, you can imagine.
Oh, yeah.
And so she had no appetite. I felt like between the pain and just the, wonkiness of a high-powered pain med, she just wasn't hungry. But then when it started subsiding and everything, she still wasn't hungry. And you couldn't, she didn't want a banana, she didn't want a Little Debbie, she didn't want anything that we tried, she didn't want it. And she'd just say, although you could hear her stomach growling, not hungry. And that, so and that just continued. Her appetite never came back, and it's like that blow did something, killed that part of her brain, or, that just turned it off. And, and she started losing weight, and she lost like 4 pounds a week because all that she was eating, or she might pick something up and eat it, but she'd roll it around in her mouth, and she might swallow it, she might spit it out. And so it went from that, and they were still having to remind her to, and but then and about every 10 days you could see a noticeable decline, to the point where they would wheel her to the table and she would just sit there and stare. It didn't register her with at all what she was there to do. And though that's when we started bringing in the Boost, but she didn't like it cold, so they would heat it up for her and put it in a mug and make it look like hot chocolate, and she would drink it. And I was there. I met Gail Wilson there one time, and she they had just made it for her, and so we were sitting there, and she'd reach over and drink a little bit every now and then, and of course, being Mama, offered some to Gail, and said, and so anyway, so that was all that she was getting up until I'd say 2 weeks before she passed, was a bottle of Boost a day.
Mm.
And and then about 2 weeks before, so around Christmas time, I was there and I had noticed another decline, and I can't remember what it was, but I passed one of the care coordinators on my way out, and I said, "How do you think Mom was doing?" This was on December 21st. And how do you think Mom was doing? And she said, "Come sit down." And she said, "We had our meetings, and your mom came up, and we weren't going to say anything to you about this until after the new year, but it's time for her to move to skilled nursing. She needs more care than what we can give." So I'm like, okay. So I talked with the hospice nurse about that, and she said, "Well, did they give you a piece of paper that was a notice? Did she say anything about we're giving you notice?" And I said, "No, I didn't. The word notice was not given to me." And she said, "The reason I'm asking is because from when they give you notice, and sometimes it's a letter, sometimes they say we're having to give you notice, you got 30 days.
Mm.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that. I'm glad she told me. And
Yeah.
because Caroline, that day, they were leaving for a cruise for Christmas, 10-day cruise. And I couldn't get in touch with her. So for 10 days, and when she got back and I told her, Caroline's like, "Well, if that's how it is, can't she," because I had already accepted by the time, and then I'm having to tell her, and I'm ready to kind of get moving on, but she was still where I had been on December 21st, because this had to just sink in. And she said, "Well, don't you think that we could talk to them and just see, can we hire another nurse? Can we, So, that's where she was. She just needed to. So, and of course, we're talking to the hospice nurses and everybody. And so Hannah said, "I don't know. I mean, we go through this a lot. And she isn't eating. And a big thing about assisted living that DHEC requires is that even in this unit, the Lantana unit that is for the ones that are, getting bad, you've got to still be able to feed yourself because they cannot feed you. And you can't hire somebody to come in and feed you. And so that and you cannot stay in bed. You've got to get up and get dressed, okay? So Hannah told me that, the hospice nurse, and so I relayed that, and I said, "Will you call Caroline and tell her that?" Because Caroline was all, "Oh, let's set up a meeting. Let's see if we can stop this and see if we can get her to stay there." And so I said, "Hannah, just please call and kind of try to talk some, not sense, I don't mean it that way, but just kind of get that light to come on, that we're wasting time doing this that we didn't have." So she did, and Caroline called me a little later and everything, and because we're both off on Fridays, so I was like, and we were already into our 30 days, and we needed to start looking, and they had a social worker who was calling around to find out who had a bed, and so luckily Hannah made the light turn on for Caroline, so we went to 5 different places. And we settled on Brookdale, on Pelham's, about a mile from the gardens, and so we moved her on a Thursday, and we met with everybody on staff, the nursing director and everybody, and Brookdale had their own hospice. And we went back and forth on that. They would have done a contract with Agape, who we had been with at the gardens. And, both of them had pluses and minuses, but we just said, let's just go with Brookdale because they're there more. and had learned through this that the agape was who the gardens kind of contracted with. So everybody there who was on hospice had agape, and agape would staff accordingly. So Mama, basically, there were I think 4 people at that point in time. There were 4 people in Lantana who were on hospice, but they had one person who worked there for 12 hours a day, and so these 4 people got a whole lot of attention. Whereas if we had stayed with Agape and they had come and would have had to come to Brookdale just to see her,
Wouldn't have gotten that.
she wouldn't have, because the regulations say you only have to spend an hour with them. So they would have done their hour, who knows when, and be gone. So we went with Brookdale because it would be the same way. They had more people there. They'd have somebody staffed there.
Right.
And that's how it worked.
That was a smart move.
So we met with those hospice, Brookdale Hospice, and the staff, and I get it. I do the same as when I was working for Frank, the elder law attorney. People would come in and say, "Oh, Mama won't go for that. Mama won't go for gifting or whatever we were needing to do for them. Oh, Mama won't go for it." Well, let's get Mama in here and see. And because this is what we did, and plus they didn't realize, as that it's your mama, so they're not going to do anything that you tell them.
Right.
But if somebody else tells them, so and I get all of this. So when we're meeting with hospice and the nursing director and all that, we're saying she's not eating, and we just really want her to be in bed, and no. And I actually said, I want this over for her. I don't want her to linger. But they're saying, well, so what is she eating, and we're like, nothing. Nothing. She sits there and she stares out the window when there's a plate in front of her, and they can't feed her a bottle of booze, blah, 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 just telling them everything. And they, the same way, are like, oh, we have really good CNAs here. They'll get her to eat. Don't worry about that. And I'm like, again, what's the point? Not starving. I don't want to starve her or nothing like that. But if she is transitioning, why poke her with food? But, okay, and we just thought, okay, and who knows, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. So we had to get her there and see. And sure enough, so on Thursday, I went to see her on Friday, I went to see her on Saturday. And both days, like 3 CNAs came in and said, what can we do to get her to eat? I've tried this, I've tried that. What's her magic thing? And I said, it doesn't register. It doesn't. He said, I put it up to her mouth, and she's just kind of sits there and stares. She's checking out, And so I just kept saying over and over again, please let her stay in bed. And but by the same token, I was the activities guy there was really cute and really, really good. And he just, he would like be talking about stuff in history and talk about World War II and stuff that they would, and he would say, and what was that song called about there'll be bluebirds over, and someone would say, the white cliffs of the, and they would be there with him and everything. And he was interested. He was really good and entertaining to watch. And, and yeah, it was worth a try to see if she would, but by that time, she wasn't even talking. And plus she was so weak. And what we found out later when, we had one of the Fridays that we had been to the places to, the 5 different places to where she was going to go, we stopped by there to tell them what we had decided on, and we just were going to go back there to see her. And one of the med techs that worked in Lantana, she had gotten up and was walking down the hall, and she was real stiff and real slow. And I said, Barbara, what happened to you? And she said, oh, one of the residents in Lantana, I was trying to transfer her from the bed to her wheelchair, and when she stood up, her knees were going like this, and we just both went down. And I couldn't let her just fall, so I had her fall on me. And I said, oh, I hope it wasn't my mom. And she said, who's your mom? And I told her, and she said, yeah, that was who it was. So between no longer eating, wanting to stay in bed, and now one of their staff injured, and they got a workers' comp claim. So, we can't hold a grudge against them.
No.
Well, not about that. I still have an issue with that not once but twice the facility ordered a walker for her and sent her to, and also ordered rehab. So rehab made money training her to use the walker. She first got a rolling walker, and rehab taught her how to use it. But if you got a memory problem, you're going to forget, which is exactly what happened. And it's up to them. That's why we pay them $5,000 a month to keep reminding her, use your walker. Mm-hmm. But no, they didn't do that with either one of them. So, and after she had the rolling walker, it's just sitting in her room, and she said, do you know what that is? Do you know whose it is and everything? And, she wasn't going, yeah, she had one of those, and it was blue. I mean, there was no way she could use that. Can I get you some?
No, one of those peppermints.
Okay.
The second drawer.
Okay.
I think my throat gets dry. Thank you.
You want some water too?
This will be good. Thank you.
These are two more.
I'm sorry.